Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a good weekend. As I'm recording this, it's still Sunday, but you won't see it till tomorrow. The sun's up, but not as far as yesterday. I got up on time. We're moving today. We're going back to our tents. I am looking forward to that. Sleeping in a strange place, regardless of what it is different, and we're not used to it. So, the son's still asleep. He doesn't get up this early. That's all right. We have our own time zones that we keep. We get 8 hours of sleep, whether it's noon to 8 p.m. or, people work all shifts. Whatever you have to do to make a living, if it's something you enjoy, you can deal with that. Okay, we're going to talk about sheep. Why sheep? Because many times we as people are compared to sheep when it comes to God. It's not a fair comparison, but sheep are below us like we are below God. We have more intelligence than sheep. He has more intelligence than us. I may have told this story before, but I was hunting with my dad. My dad was an avid hunter, fisherman, outdoorsman. That's what he did in the off season of baseball when he played Major League Baseball. Played for Boston and Chicago, 39 to 46, so long time ago. I never saw it. But anyhow, we're hunting. We're hunting ducks, so we're in duck blinds. Basically a big barrel sunk into the mud. You walk out there. Sometimes they're dry ground if they're not flooding that part of the land. They're always on farms, because it's the only place where there's lots of free land. He pays for it, but it's the only place where you can have people out there and be shooting guns and not disturbing the neighbors. Now, there were sheep running around us. And the sheepdog, I don't know where he was. He was off taking care of some other sheep, and one of them wandered off. And he got himself, there was a part of the fence that came together like this. And he got his nose right in the corner of the fence. He was looking down, eating the entire time, and walked until he hit the corner of the fence. He was trapped. He didn't know how to get out of there. We're yelling at him, turn around, look over here. Nope, he just stood there, and for about 2 hours he bellowed, which was delightful. Bah! Till the sheepdog came and chased him out. Sheep are not real bright. Most of the animals that we eat are not real bright. For the most part, we don't eat horses because they're smart. Cows, sheep, pigs. Physiologically, pigs are closer to us than any other animal. However, they're all dumb animals. They can learn a little bit. Like our dogs, cats can learn a little bit. Dogs can learn 50 to 100 words. Cats can learn more. They just choose not to use them. But we're compared to sheep. What can you do with sheep? Well, as you're raising them, you get clothing, because you get their wool, which, like our hair, grows back. You don't do it in the dead of winter. You do it when it's hot, so they enjoy the air conditioning. Because a wool jacket on a sheep is just as warm as a wool jacket on us. But they're not very smart. And a shepherd, whether you're a shepherd boy like David or an adult, like the shepherds, or whatever, however many shepherds were on the hill, and they came to tell of Jesus' birth, it is not a glamorous job. You don't walk into town and say, "Hi everybody, I'm a shepherd." For one, you probably stink to high heaven because you're having to pick these sheep up, clean them up. If you're going to use that wool, it's got to be kept relatively clean, and they roll in the mud and other things. So it's not a glamorous job. It is a job of a servant who will go after one that wanders off. Sheep are herd animals. They're better protected when they're together. Nature knows, as they were programmed, that when animals are together, they're more dangerous. Now, 10 sheep are not much more dangerous than one, but when they're together, nature knows to leave them alone. When one wanders off, and typically what happens is a sickly one won't be able to keep up, will fall back. An elderly one won't be able to keep up. The little lambs won't be able to keep up, although often those are pulled aside and raised separately until they're big enough. And that's where the wolves go for. They're keeping the herd pure. No breeding amongst the ones that are sickly, so that the herd stays healthy in the long run. Very well planned out. Most shepherds will do a lot of the work themselves, but they do have sheepdogs. And there are a couple of types. The one that we are traditional seeing, like in the cartoon with the sheepdog and the coyote, that's a different breed. The one I'm talking about looks more like a collie, but with different colored fur. They're smaller and very agile, can run around. The big sheepdog, they just kind of stand guard, but they're able to charge a wolf. Whereas the little ones, they really don't. They will run around them and harass them, but they don't really fight with the wolf. The wolf is bigger. But everybody has their own tactics. But the cartoon, very seldom, unless he dug underneath, did he come up and grab one sheep out of the herd. He'd get one that's off by itself. And Satan's like that. You wander off from the herd and he'll come over and pick you up and carry you off. And he may be in sheep's clothing, like the cartoon. I like the way they give them names, and they had to clock in and clock out. Morning, Fred. Morning, George. I think that's what their names were. They give them common names so they wouldn't be special. And sheep were the ones used in the temple to sacrifice. You could use a number of animals, and it depended on your income. You could use a dove. You could use a coin if you didn't have anything. That old woman who put the coin in was the poorest of the group, because that's all she had. She couldn't afford a dove, the cheapest animal. And you would show up with your donation, depending on what you had to do. And the priest and everybody would sacrifice it, and then they got to have what was left over. There's a purpose behind everything. Nothing is wasted with God. And Jesus became our sheep sacrifice. We'll see that in a bit when we read out of the Old Testament. I got a couple of chapters out of the Old Testament to look at. And of course, John, who knew Jesus better than anybody, the only one of the apostles to survive not being martyred. He did spend time in prison, but he was the only one that lived to die at old age. Some may say that would have been better off to have died early and gone to heaven, but until the resurrection, you didn't go to heaven. You went to paradise. Jesus emptied that. Okay, so let's take a look at let's go to John 10:3 first. Let's start in 1. Jesus speaking, it's red letter. Most assuredly I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, the same as a sheep, is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them. And the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. Yet they will by no means follow a stranger, but will flee from him. Resist the devil, and he'll flee from you. For they do not know the voice of strangers. I'm going to jump down to 7. Again, Jesus, most assuredly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who ever come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear him. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. And jumping over to verse 25. I told you, and you did not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness to me, but you did not believe, because you are not of my sheep. As I have said to you, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish. Jesus was crucified on a cross to comply with the law. God does things by laws, by covenants. He never removes a covenant. He may supersede it, come up with a better one, but it encompasses what was in the first one. Speaking of Jesus, where am I at here? I'm Psalm 53. Who has believed our report? Nobody believed who Jesus was, even though we're going to see he's talked about in the Old Testament many, many times. And this was what they lived in. They knew this. But they corrupted it by creating their own books. You think Chuck Smith was the first one to create a supplement to the Bible? No, the Pharisees and the Sadducees did long before. And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or comeliness, and when you see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. Describing the appearance of Jesus. I left my coffee sitting on the table. God has to take care of his sheep. He is despised and rejected by men, the man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. He cried over Jerusalem. And that basically includes all of us. And we hid him, as it were, we hid from him, as it were, our faces. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Peter, who walked with him, denied him 3 times. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. He was wounded for our transgressions. died on a cross for our sins. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him. And by his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid upon him the iniquity of us all. I could go on, finish the chapter. Talks about Jesus. You got another chapter that talks about crucifixion. Years before it was ever thought of, or at least ever done. I got a message in from the person we're house sitting for, so I'm going to pause the tape and I'll come right back. Okay, I am back. I did have a request that we do Psalm 83 at some point in time. Why am I so low? And the sun's coming up through the trees now. I've done that before, and I'll do it again. As with pretty much everything coming forward to us, we don't know, other than the fact that these are predicted. Emil Safati thinks that this would have been one of the wars fought with Israel since they become a nation, possibly the first war that was fought with them, which was right in 1948. The Arabs didn't like it. But they've had many other wars. We had the Six-Day War in '67 where they gained Jerusalem. Every time they've been attacked, God has protected them, and they've won. It's got it in their head now that they're going to win the next one, because they're going to have the strongest prophet in the world, and that's all he is to them. But they're looking for Jesus too. And when the Antichrist shows up, they're going to grab onto him big time. But so are the Jews, until he defiles the temple. Because they know that God will behave in a certain way. So in the beginning of the tribulation, whenever the Antichrist appears, he will appear benevolent, powerful, loving. Appear. He's that wolf that put the sheep's clothing over him. And knowing him, he probably even adds the eau de cologne of sheep to smell like him. Okay, well we're gonna look at the chapter before Psalm 83. We're going to look at Psalm 82. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and the needy. Deliver the poor and the needy. Free them from the hand of the wicked. They do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are unstable. I said, you are gods, and all of you are my children of the Most High, but you shall die like men. They may be the chosen ones, thought to be gods in their own mind, thinking of Scientology and other religions that think they can get so strong in their mind that they can command God. It doesn't work that way. Oh, you can be a confident human being, but you don't command God. There's only one power we have that God gives us, and that's the power to say no to God. Of course, unless you're one of his chosen. If you're one of his chosen, he'll go to all corners of the earth to retrieve you, as a good shepherd does. But if you're not one of his, and you deny him, whatever's out there, it's all yours. And the world is a very dangerous place. Most of us as Christians don't see the dangers that's out there. Arise, O God, judge the earth, and you shall inherit all nations. God has a plan for all of us, every one of us. We're his sheep. And unlike sheep, we still can do tasks for him. I don't think the sheep do any tasks for the shepherds. They might freely walk up and allow the shepherd to shear them because they're hot and they want to cool off. But that may be the limit of their intelligence. We repeatedly sin against God, even after being Christians, because it's in our nature. We don't have a strong regulator. It's kind of faulty. We do our best, but we get distracted. And you got to keep your eye on those sheep at all times that we're supposed to be looking after. We're helping God to be shepherds. We get distracted. When we get distracted, we get to move with the devil a little bit, and the sheep get to be at risk. We have to look after them too. Ultimately, all the power and everything goes to God. But he lets us do some of his work. When he comes back to rule for 1,000 years, all of us that go up to heaven to be with him before that will come back and rule with an iron fist, like he's going to do. Of course, Satan's going to try to kill us first, thus the rapture. It's not a matter of when the rapture is. It's the fact that it is coming. The world's going to get so bad that we have to be plucked out of it. You can't pray for the world to stop going downhill. You can pray for those that are in the world to be protected from the world. That we should do all the time. Pray for friends and family. Pray for their salvation if they're not. Focus your prayers on things that matter and things that we can do something about. We can't stop this. It's predicted in the Bible that the world is going to fall away, become corrupt, become Satan's realm. Just like Noah before the flood. They're going to go about their business. They're not going to know that the world is impending doom coming. Same in Sodom and Gomorrah. They're not going to pay attention to anything going on other than their own personal interest. But our shepherd will come after us if we wander off. And he'll carry us back. If we're not able to walk back, he'll carry us back. And the minute you're lost, unlike the sheep that got caught in the fence, turn around. The shepherd will be right there. Now he has a staff, those hooked shepherd staffs. The reason they're on a hook like that is you can grab the sheep and pull it back using the hook, which you could also do with the sheep that was in the corner of the fence. Don't be like a sheep any more than you have to. Don't be so worried about your next meal that you just have your head down going straight ahead and you're not watching where you're going. Sheep have been known to walk off cliffs. We can get ourselves into similar predicaments if the shepherd isn't paying attention. But our shepherd never misses anything. And he's also multi-talented and omnipresent. So there may be millions of sheep down here, or billions. He can take care of each one at a time. Now he has other helpers down here too. Occasionally we read about them. Michael, Gabriel, and others. There are other beings living out there. We call them, on Earth, we call them aliens. I call them angels. Or if they're on the other team, demons. There are creatures out there. And sometimes we may see them and think that they're an alien. I look forward to the good aliens coming. They don't need a spaceship. They can fly without one. All right. Stay with your shepherd. Thank him daily. And then go out and be one yourself. We are to be servants. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless.